Hi, my name is Joe Basilico. So for me, the hardest part about keeping up with my physical health has always been the food part of it. I feel like that's something that people think should be the easy part, but for me, it just became so boring and monotonous eating, chicken breast and white rice every day. And it wasn't until I realized that you could actually cook good and tasty food and still be on that diet and still be eating healthy. Um, with that being said, I wanted to go over how I make one of my favorite go to meals that I eat just about once a week. If I had to give a title to this meal, I'd probably just call it some sort of makeshift burrito bowl because that's about what the ingredients come out to be like. With that being said, let's start by going over the ingredients. First off, the spices that we'll need is going to be salt, onion powder, garlic powder, chipotle red pepper, curry powder, ground black pepper, and ground cumin. Next is going to be a red bell pepper. This is an optional. I don't actually use the one that I've got today, but you can use one if you do like it, and you could use any color bell pepper as well. Next, we're going to use about a quarter of a chopped up red onion, then half an avocado, then 1/3 less fat cream cheese, then about 8 ounces or 2 servings of beef sirloin. If you'd rather a different protein, then go ahead, feel free to. You could use chicken, you could use ground meats such as beef, chicken, turkey, even use tofu if you like, but today I'm using beef sirloin. Next, we're doing corn. Once again, you could use any corn you'd like. I'm using a canned corn just because it's easier. If you want to do corn on the cob, that's fine too. And then finally, we're going to use about 50 grams or 1 serving of rice. I'm using basmati rice, but like I said, with everything else, if you prefer a different rice, go ahead and use a different rice. So now that we've got all of our ingredients together, I think the next logical step would be to go step by step on how to actually put this meal together. So for me, the first step that I'm always going to do when rice is involved with the meal is I'm going to get that started right away because the majority of the time the rice is what takes the longest to cook just because it's got to boil in that water and whatnot. So our first step that we're going to go with is going to be with seasoning the rice. For me, I'm going to season my rice with red chili pepper, curry powder, and salt. The red chili pepper, I'd almost say that's optional. I don't think it adds much taste to the rice. I think the curry powder does a good job at doing that. I add it mostly for the spice. If you don't like spicy food, then I'd probably just say go ahead and omit that. But I like it, so that's what I add it for. As far as the amounts that I put in, I usually go by eye with all my spices. But if you want to be safe, I'd go for about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of each. Obviously, the more chili pepper you add, the hotter the rice will actually end up being. It doesn't add too much of a kick, but it's noticeable sometimes. Once we got our rice seasoned, we're going to add about 90 grams of water to the bowl and then stir in all of our spices. So you'll notice the water changes, probably a yellowish color due to the curry powder. And then once it's completely spiced and has the water in it, we're going to put it on the oven. I'm going to leave it without the top on to start, and I'm going to have it on high heat and let it come to a boil. And then we'll come back to it once it does start boiling. Along with adding the rice on the stove, I'm also going to put the cast iron on the stove as well and put that over high heat because I want that to start heating up because that's what we're going to cook our steak with. So now that we've got our rice cooking on the stove and our cast iron skillet heating up on the stove, our next step that we're going to have to do is season our steak and get it prepped to start cooking. So for me, I'm going to heavily salt the steak because the salt is what really brings the flavor out of the steak. So I don't go cheap with it. I get a lot of salt on there. Next, we're going to get our black pepper after the salt. And I go a little lighter on the black pepper because I'm not the biggest fan of an overpowering amount of pepper on the steak. But if you like pepper, go ahead and do as much as you want. I usually go lighter. Following the pepper, we go onion and garlic powder. And then I'll add some chipotle chili pepper to the steak as well. And then finally cumin, ground cumin. I'd be careful with the cumin because I found it to be pretty overpowering sometimes. So if you're not familiar with cooking with it, I wouldn't do too much because it easily overpowers the taste of just about everything else if you do too much. So once the steak is seasoned, we're going to wait for our rice to come to a boil. Once that rice comes to a boil, we're going to lower that heat all the way down to low, let it simmer, and put the top on it and just let it simmer until all the water is gone and you're left with just your cooked rice. So once that rice comes to a boil and you lower it to a simmer and put the cap on, next step is going to be to start cooking the rest of the food. So we're going to put the corn in another pot and bring that to a medium to high heat and let that come to a boil. And then with our cast iron skillet, we're going to oil it with just extra virgin olive oil. And then we're going to put our steak on. I'll typically cook it 3 to 4 minutes and then flip and then cook another 3 to 4 minutes. And that usually brings it to a good medium steak. And that's how I prefer my steak. If you like it more well done, then obviously go longer. And if you like it more rare, then less time and you're good. While everything is cooking on the stove at this point, we're going to do our final steps, which is just get our guacamole ready. We're going to cut our avocado in half and then use that half an avocado, put it in a bowl. Comes out to about 55 grams for me, but all avocados can be different sizes, so keep that in mind. Once we have that in there, I'm going to put in my 1/4 of a chopped red onion, and then I'm also going to do 1 tablespoon of a 1/3 less fat cream cheese, and then we're going to mash it up and get it all nice and together. And then finally, once everything's done cooking, we get it all on a plate, make it look as nice as you want, and then enjoy your meal. So all in all, this is one of my go-to meals. It's incredibly tasty. It's very healthy for you. It's about 931 calories, 52 grams of protein, 74 grams of carbs, and 51 grams of fat. All natural ingredients, and honestly, you can't go wrong. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes, including prep time, to cook the entire thing, and I highly recommend you try it.